Okay, before we begin, I would like to thank Jeeny and Bractlet for sponsoring this tech talk, and let's dive right into this. You know who I am, and let's talk about Deno. So, Deno, they have this brief description of themselves on their website. Deno is a simple, modern, secure runtime for JavaScript, TypeScript, WebAssembly that uses V8 and is built in Rust. So we're going to cover all of our W's here. So first, we're going to break down what they actually mean by that. Then we're going to talk about a brief history of Node specific to what that means for Deno, what Deno might mean for you. And then we'll get into some commonly asked questions, such as if Node is on the way out, and then we're going to recap. So what is Deno? The simple and modern part are easy to understand. You have a single executable file. It's like 32 megabytes. It's very lightweight. There's compatibility for lots of modern JavaScript APIs. You have just like native fetch, as it should be, right? When they emphasize secure, they mean Deno does not defaultly give or is given access to your system shell or the environment of your whole computer. Deno requires each file to individually declare and be provided what it needs, and when both reading and writing have to give these things out. An oversimplification of what a runtime is there are two things called runtimes, a runtime library and a runtime system. The latter is often just referred to as a runtime, and it's what they mean here. It's a runtime environment for your code to be executed in. An easy way to think about this is that this is the room in your house that you live and work out of. You have access to your bathroom the same way a runtime has access to your file system sockets. It does garbage collection. And in that runtime, it allows you to compile and execute JavaScript, TypeScript, and WebAssembly. So JavaScript, you know it, you love it. It's dynamically typed. And Ryan Dahl, specifically, the creator of both Node and Deno, also loves it and sees its place in programming as a fun language to prototype and hack and script in. The way he talks about it shows a very genuine appreciation for that place in coding. And then there's TypeScript. He sees this sort of as the future to JavaScript, not in the sense that it is a replacement to JavaScript, but it's something your code develops into from JavaScript as you move from dynamic typing and you transition file by file to the static typing in TypeScript. It's permanent, stable. So then you have WebAssembly, which is its own can of worms, a low-level assembly-like language. In short, it allows assembly languages, reading compact and binary data, to run on the web. Languages like Rust, C, C++. WebAssembly is by design able to run alongside JavaScript. So this is just how the internet works, at this point anyways. And then you have V8. So V8 is an open source JavaScript engine developed by the Chromium team at Google, and it is how many browsers process and execute JavaScript. And then the very last thing in their description was Deno is written in Rust. Rust is a statically typed language. It emphasizes type safety and performance, and it's very, very similar to something like C++, and has strict memory safety to protect your variable names and avoid the need for garbage collection. So there's lots of cases where you'd want to execute some JavaScript on your computer, but you don't want this code execution to have access to everything on your computer. Dahl refers to this problem as having to shell out or shelling out. You're giving access to your system shell to this program. You don't want to give this power with Node, and you don't want to give it with Deno. And something like V8, which you could use to control this, is just very difficult to actually use on its own. So Node requires all these installs and programs to be running to allow this to actually happen. And then raw V8 is basically totally unapproachable. So Dahl describes a possibility with Deno as the sort of in-between option. For instance, with Deno, you could integrate something like typed arrays directly. So this uint8 data form, an unsigned 8-bit integer, just a compact form of binary, where you would be able to interact with something like promises from JavaScript while you're in Deno. And because Deno is built in Rust, you might also be able to map these promises in JavaScript to futures in Rust. So on the non-technical side, the side that I actually think is the most exciting part about Deno, listening to Dahl talk about Deno is like a genuine treat. He's just so passionate about it, and I would highly recommend listening to some of the talks I have linked in a later slide. So let's go on to the why. Why was Node made? Why would you choose Deno, right? So Ryan Dahl, the creator of Deno, it started in 2018. He prototyped it and launched it out of an event. He was also the original designer and creator of Node back in 2008. He helped maintain it for a few years before moving on. JavaScript has changed a lot since then. And with these changes, a lot of new problems have arisen from the use of Node. Node fixed them originally, but now they have introduced problems of their own. One of Dahl's primary talking points is bringing up like this landscape, how it came to exist, how Node came to exist. You did not have async and await. You didn't have this non-blocking JavaScript. You did not have ES modules, the ability to import a just bunch of code into a file directly through a URL. You didn't have typed arrays, these uint8 data forms I mentioned earlier. You couldn't read and write this raw data with JavaScript. So these things didn't exist. So we had Node. We have Node now. Your 500 gigabyte lightweight Node modules folder, security issues inherited from blindly trusting Node packages, the necessities of Node, things that it needs to run JavaScript on and off the web, the way that Node needs access to TCP sockets, its legacy APIs. These things are the tip of the iceberg for some of Node's problems. The Node technology is perfect, but we have 14 years of problems that are very difficult to solve from never really checking in on Node. Deno offers support out of the box for Node modules, but one thing it strives to do is prevent the dependency hell. Problems with all these external dependencies kind of chaining into each other. Dahl recognizes that this isn't a problem up to a certain point. Say you only have 1 or 2 layers deep of dependencies, right? It isn't chaining at that point, and you haven't downloaded all of NPM into your file. So you have your core Deno package, which is kept as minimal as possible. And then you have the Deno standard set of modules where, at least as of 2019, Dahl said he was superficially reviewing all of them before he put them on there. So then we move on to one of the biggest questions that people have about Deno, and that is the when. So when is Deno going to come in and swoop us off our feet, pulling us from the black hole of our Node modules folder and into this lush tropical landscape of dinosaurs, right? So the question of when for most people is going to be never. Dahl emphasizes heavily in his talks that it's whenever you actually want it. If you like Node, you should use it. If you don't like Node, give Deno a shot. Translating something from Node to Deno is probably unfeasible for many, many products for many, many reasons, whether it is dev hours, the limitations of Node because it is silly new technology, the quirks of Node, sorry, the limitations of Deno because it's new, the quirks of Node because it is, you have to use some of these things to make things work. It all depends on how you look at it. Deno uses ES modules out of the gate, so you don't have the same like required imports and things like that. The require function isn't even available in Deno by default, right? There is a compatibility library natively supported by Deno, which you can use to do some of these things, and you can import these Node modules this way, but it doesn't support everything. All of Deno's asynchronous actions natively return promises, so Deno provides different APIs than Node. Like mentioned previously in the what section, talking about how Rust can interact with futures and how you can incorporate communication between Rust's futures and JavaScript's promises with Deno. Things like this allow for new possibilities of code, making these lower level languages like C++ or Rust more accessible to people with different viewpoints. Like, how could you come in this? What can you make? How can you work with it? So Node is stable. It's extremely stable. It's probably not going to change. And if it does, there are committees that agree on these things. They have to, because it is so big. It is so necessary to stay the same. Deno and Node won't ever be compatible in this way, where you could just take something from Deno or take something from Node and shove it in Deno or vice versa. So with that caveat, there's support to move things over, but Deno isn't super groundbreaking. And it's one of the most important things to think about here, what Deno is. And to summarize, is that Deno is super cool. You can see the power and benefits from things that are on screen right now, but the thing that draws me to Deno is totally unrelated to what it can do, but what's being done to it and on it and by who. Deno is fascinating, really, really fascinating, almost purely to me because of its creator, Ryan Dahl, who is so passionate and interesting. In Plato's Symposium, he writes of a priestess named Diotima and her ladder of love. And on this ladder, there are 6 steps: love for a particular body, love for all bodies, love for souls, love for laws and institutions, love for knowledge, and then the love for beauty itself. And when I think of Deno, and from the research that I've done and watching Ryan Dahl speak, I see a man who is on the precipice of this last step. Ryan Dahl has a love for programming, for coding, for knowledge, for building something that is fun and beautiful. Beautiful in this philosophical way, one that is yearning and searching for better technologies. And this is something that is truly and genuinely unique to Deno. And if that resonates with you, then I would recommend trying out Deno. And that concludes my talk. So thank you for listening. Here are my citations, and in the corner there is my LinkedIn and GitHub if you would like to connect.